You just finished another year. It felt like a few weeks. The days themselves were long, some of them endless, but the year vanished the moment you looked back at it, folding into a blur of mornings and meals and screens you can barely remember. You are not imagining this. Something happens to time as you age. It doesn't slow. It doesn't stop. It speeds up quietly, year after year, until whole decades start slipping past like long weekends. But the real reason is far stranger than a fading memory or a busy schedule. It has almost nothing to do with the clock on your wall. To understand it, you have to go back, not to your childhood, to before that, to a version of you that had no idea what anything was. Think about the first time you saw the ocean, the first bike, the first day of school, when the hallway felt enormous and the smell of the room burned itself into you forever. You can still see those moments. They have edges. They have color. Why? Because they were new. Your brain is not a camera rolling at a steady speed. It is a machine built to notice difference. When something is new, your brain works hard. It records everything. It lays down dense, detailed memory because it doesn't yet know what matters and what doesn't. When something is familiar, it does the opposite. It coasts. It saves energy. It stops writing anything down at all. This is the heart of it. In 1890, a psychologist named William James wrote about this in his book, The Principles of Psychology. He noticed that as people grow older, the years seem to grow hollow and collapse. His explanation was simple and unsettling. Childhood is full of first times, and every first time stretches. Adulthood is full of repetition, and repetition shrinks. A day with nothing new in it barely registers. A life full of such days feels short, no matter how many hours it actually contains. Have you noticed how a normal Tuesday leaves no trace at all? You wake at the same time. You take the same route. You see the same faces, eat the same lunch, feel the same low hum of the same worries. Your brain has seen all of it before, so it records almost none of it. Weeks of your life can pass this way, real and lived and completely unremembered, and when you reach for them later, there is nothing there to hold. There is a second reason, and it is even simpler. Math. In 1897, a French philosopher named Paul Janet proposed something so clean it almost feels like a trick. He said that the length of a year is measured against the life you've already lived. When you are 2 years old, a single year is half of everything you have ever known. It is vast. It is an era. When you are 50, that same year is 1/50th of your life. It is a sliver. The year didn't get shorter. Your ruler for measuring it got longer. Picture it as a staircase. The first step is enormous, taller than you are. The next is a little smaller. Each step above it shrinks and shrinks until near the top the steps are so shallow you barely feel yourself climbing. That is your sense of a year, aging in proportion to itself. A summer at age 7 really does last forever because compared to the small life you've lived, it nearly is forever. But there is a third piece, and this one is physical. In 2019, a mechanical engineer named Adrian Bejan at Duke University offered an explanation that had nothing to do with memory or math. It had to do with your eyes. He studied how the brain processes visual information and found that as you age, the rate at which you take in new images slows. Your eyes move less. Your nerves carry signals more slowly. The mental frames you capture per second drop. Think about what that means. When you were young, your brain was flooding with images, taking in more snapshots of the world per second than it does now. More snapshots means more perceived events packed into every minute, and more events subjectively means more time. As the frame rate slows with age, the same clock minute contains fewer mental pictures. So the outside world appears to rush by, not because time changed, but because you are sampling less of it. You are watching the same film at a slower shutter speed. There is a name for the version of this you feel on vacation. Researchers call it the holiday paradox, and the science writer Claudia Hammond described it beautifully. A week in a new city feels enormous while you're living it, crammed with unfamiliar streets, strange food, and small navigational panics. But the moment it's over, it also collapses into almost nothing in memory, because although it was dense, it was short. Now flip that. An ordinary week at home feels like nothing while you live it, because nothing about it demands your attention. Yet in the long run, weeks like that are exactly the ones that vanish. Novelty stretches time in the moment and expands it in memory. Routine compresses time in memory even when the minutes drag. Your life, looking backward, is measured almost entirely by the new things in it. So what does neuroscience actually say is happening in there? The neuroscientist David Eagleman ran experiments to test this directly. He found that when people encounter something genuinely novel or frightening, their brains encode the memory with far more detail, and afterward they swear the event lasted longer than it did. Time didn't dilate. The density of the memory did. Your sense of duration, it turns out, is not read off some internal stopwatch. It is reconstructed after the fact based on how much you remember. More memory feels like more time. Less memory feels like less, which leaves you with a strange and slightly frightening conclusion. The reason your years are speeding up is that you are, without meaning to, remembering less of them. Somewhere in your 20s or 30s, the firsts started running out. You'd already had your first job, your first heartbreak, your first apartment, your first taste of most of the things a life contains. The world stopped being a place you were discovering and became a place you were maintaining. And a maintained life, however full and however good, leaves faint tracks. Your brain, efficient as ever, quietly stopped recording. But here is the part that changes everything. This is not a sentence, it is a mechanism, and a mechanism can be worked. If time speeds up when life becomes routine, then time slows down when life becomes new. Not new like buying something, new like doing something your brain has never had to figure out before. A language it stumbles through, a road it's never driven, a skill that makes your hands clumsy and your attention sharp. Every one of those forces your brain back into recording mode, laying down the dense, detailed memory it stopped bothering with years ago. Have you noticed that the most memorable years of your life were usually the hardest ones? The year you moved, the year everything changed, the year you were a little lost, a little scared, and completely awake. Those years feel long in memory precisely because they were full of firsts and your brain wrote all of it down. Comfort is quiet, novelty is loud, and your memory only keeps what shouts. Our ancestors understood a version of this without ever naming it. For most of human history, survival meant paying attention, a new sound in the grass, a change in the weather, an unfamiliar face at the edge of the fire. To live was to notice constantly, because failing to notice could kill you. Their days were saturated with the very thing that stretches time. You've inherited that same alert, recording brain. You've just built a world so safe and so predictable that it rarely has to switch on. So the acceleration you feel isn't really about age. It's about attention. A child's year is long because a child notices everything. Your year is short because you've learned to notice almost nothing. Gliding through familiar days on autopilot, your brain saving its ink for an emergency that comfortable life never sends. The clock is honest. It always was. It's your recording of the clock that's been quietly fading, which means the goal was never to slow time down. It was to wake back up inside it. Look up on your walk home tonight at something you pass every single day and have never once actually seen. Take the wrong turn on purpose. Learn the thing you keep saying you're too old to learn. Every act of genuine attention hands your brain something to remember, and every memory you make is one more thing standing between you and the blur. You just finished another year. It doesn't have to feel like a few weeks.